without any further ado, I'm going to go ahead and pass it on off to David and have David introduce himself. And like I said, he has impacted all of us, families everywhere, all over the United States, all over the world. Everyone knows David Wiley. The floor is yours.
Well, I think that was a little oversold, but I'll go on and do that. My name is David Wiley, and name sign up here, and I work with the Texas Deafblind Project. Our offices are at Texas School for the Blind and Visually Impaired in Austin, and I'm really happy to have the opportunity to come and speak with you today, and to talk about this idea of meaningful employment and thinking outside the box on that. My role in our project is to consider issues of transition planning for students as they near graduation who are deafblind, and also to work together with agencies outside of public education who provide services in community settings, a wide variety of different services. And one of the things that I think is important if we're going to do a good job for students in schools in making sure that their outcomes work successfully for them is to have a close connection with the agencies, organizations that provide services to individuals in community settings, because that's what students are going to benefit from and get support from all throughout the course of their lifetime. And I think it's also important to know something about stories about where our students go and what they do in life. I think one of the things that sometimes happens for educators is we judge transition planning based on what we do in schools. And it's good. What we do in schools is important, but if we really want to judge how successful it was, we need to know something about what happens to the graduates and where they've gone in life and 5-10 years down the road, so that we can make a judgment on whether or not what we did in schools was successful. And so I think that's one of the ways that I like to think about transition planning as being not only forward thinking, but having information and knowledge that about what's going on with students afterwards. And so we're going to be talking about that. We've set this up really as a two-part endeavor, and I'm going to be back on Thursday to do some more. So I'm going to focus more substantially on Thursday on some actual cases of individuals who are doing a variety of different activities in their adult lives. But today I want to start by talking about how we lay foundations that lead towards success. And so I'm going to share my screen and throw you up some talking points on this. So the first topic I want to talk about is how work relates to other life activities after graduation. And so in thinking about this, I put in there that let's sort of take away all the different domains and the different sort of segments of life and think about what would we think is a successful outcome for anybody as they go through their life. And the first one I put there is that we all strive for what we might call a good quality of life. And we have to think about what that means. And one of the things that's true about that is that what is a good quality of life is an individual evaluation that we all make for ourselves. What do I want in my life? What activities do I want to do? What kinds of opportunities am I looking for? What kind of people do I want to surround myself with? And this is what we usually judge to think, are things going well for me? And so one of the things that we need to do when we think about work is how does it fit into that equation? Is it bringing a sense of a sense to an individual that they would judge of, this is going kind of the way that I want it to be. And I would say that I'm having a good quality of life. So that would be the first thing that I'd like to say about that. The second point I put up there is that transition planning, as we think about it, often puts its emphasis on work to the exclusion of other life activities. Now, I know other life activities are in the regs and are in our checklists, but I think sometimes I've even heard the transition from school to adult life referred to as school to work transition, with this emphasis on work, to the extent that it sort of sets the other stuff down as secondary, I fear. And one of the reasons I do that is because IDEA has certain indicators that they ask states to look at and report information about to provide an assessment of the quality of services, special education services that are being provided in their state. And there are a number of indicators that they have that they must collect data on and report. And one of them is specifically for post-school outcomes. It's indicator 14. And what it says is that in looking at students, the percentage of youth who are no longer in secondary school but had IEPs in effect at the time that they left school, in looking at it, say, judge how many people were enrolled in higher education within 1 year of leaving high school. Second, how many were enrolled in higher education or competitively employed within 1 year of leaving high school. And third, enrolled in higher education or in some other post-secondary education or training program or competitively employed or in some other employment within 1 year of leaving high school. Well, that's a big mouthful of bureaucratic mumbo-jumbo that if we boiled it down, it says that after 1 year after graduating, how many of the graduates either have a job or are going to higher education or some other educational opportunity. And what I fear sometimes is we might view that as a indicator of success, and it causes us to put a real emphasis on that element of transition planning. If a student achieves this, we've had a successful outcome. And if they don't achieve that, I don't know, it doesn't specifically say it's not successful, but we can kind of interpret it that that's what they're judging. And I think that that's a rather, those are important things. I'm not saying those aren't valuable things or important things for people to have achieved. And I understand why they want that to be the measure, because they are important. They're also pretty easy to count. Do you have the job or don't you? Are you enrolled in college or aren't you? So I understand why that's true, but I also think it's a rather narrow view of a person's life in deciding whether or not that person is successful on the element of a good quality of life. I'm an older gentleman now. I'm quickly approaching retirement age. And if someone were to ask me, Dave, have you had a high quality of life? Have you had a good life? There are many things that I might think about. I would probably think about the places I've gotten to go. I would probably think about the people I've met and the time I spent together with them. I would think about social relationships and family relationships that I have. I would think about any number of rewarding and fun activities I may have taken part in. And some of that might surround the job that I do, or the classes that I've taken. But I think it would be a strange answer if someone said, Dave, have you had a good life? And my answer was, well, within 1 year after graduation, I was employed and going to college. So I guess so. Now that's a rather narrow look at a person's life. And I think one of the things that we need to do if we're working to try to help our students achieve the things that they want to achieve and to have the kind of life that they want to have is to put, to view things in a more holistic manner and to think about how the work and school that they do fit into other elements of life. I think another issue with considering that narrow band is for some of our students, those things may not be their goals. And they may have different goals. And that's what we should be looking at to decide whether or not those students are being successful. Are they meeting whatever goals they have? And if we look at all of our students who are deafblind in the school, there's a wide variety of people who have different levels of skill, who have different needs for support, who may have different understandings of use of language, who may have additional disabilities that impact the way that they gather knowledge and take part in life. And all of these things may make that one criteria not a particularly good fit. And I think sometimes we see students or their families feel like when they think about the sort of programmed course that sometimes we place students on, they think it's maybe not a really good fit. And so we have to think about what's a good fit for every individual student and make sure that what we're doing is leading them toward the kinds of goals that make sense to them and that would help them feel like, hey, wow, things are going the way I want it to be. I'm having a good life. I'm having a high quality of life. So one of the things that we like to do during transition planning is to talk to students and families and say, how would you describe success in adult life? And we find that the answer is different for each and every student. And that's one of the things we need to look at. So I want to talk some about viewing life in this sort of holistic fashion.
Hey, David, before we move forward, let's go ahead and do an interpreter switch, okay? Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Hold on one second. Okay, gracias. You're good.
Okay, and so to look at each student as an individual and figuring out what they would how they would feel they were being successful. And I put down 3 words that I like to use when thinking about this issue of quality of life. And so I said, what daily life activities would result in a sense of purpose, satisfaction, and joy? Those are 3 things that I think are sort of universal, even though I was just talking about how individual everything is. I think words are pretty universal. I think how those things are achieved are different for a person. But I think those things are all things that people would say, this is something that helps me feel good about my life, that I have a sense of purpose, that there's something that I feel like needs to be done, that I have a reason to get up in the morning, that I feel like what I do is important. Satisfaction, and that's a personal thing. Are the things that I do personally satisfying to me? Are they things that give me a sense of comfort that I get to do them? That are things that I'm not stressed out about? Is it things that make me feel like things are good? And then the last word I use there is joy. And joy is something that I think as educators, sometimes we don't talk too much about, but I think is a very important thing to think about, is what kinds of opportunities are students looking forward to that they would feel very happy about. There's I put in the at the bottom of this slide, the name of a video called "The Role of the Emotional Brain" was with Dr. Jan van Dijk, who's one of our great researchers and writers and teachers in the field of deafblindness. He was from Holland and just died a few years ago. But in this video, he's kind of, it's found on YouTube there. It's called "The Role of the Emotional Brain." And it was a webinar he did for the Perkins School. And in it, he's talking about sort of retrospective of his life and his teaching, and how he changed his view of what was important over time. And what he says is, I was first just focused on acquiring knowledge and skills, how good of a reader is a person, how good are they at math, etc. And over time, I started thinking, what would actually be the thing that I would hope that would happen in their life? And he says, he boils it down to, I would hope that in their life they have moments of joy. And so that's one of the things we have to think about. And if we're going to think about how we create opportunities in employment or in recreation or social or whatever element of a person's life that we're looking at, are the things that we're guiding them toward, or are the things that we're assisting them with, things that are going to lead them to have these sense of purpose, satisfaction, and joy. And working hard to figure out what those things are and how we can help the students achieve that. So in order to do that, what I'm going to do is talk about 4 different elements that are a framework, I think, for exploring, planning, and organizing adult life experiences. And so today I'm going to talk about these 4 things and relate that to how we think about employment and how we apply it in trying to assist a student to be able to look forward to the things they're going to do after school. So the first thing I put in there, and I think this is the first step if we're really going to help a student be able to be happy with the things that they do in the course of their life, is discover what their interests are. And I put the word discover, and that's what people who work in the field of customized employment just talk about a lot, is discovery. And it's something that I think we need to think about with students, is finding out what their interests are, but also helping the students find out what their interests are. I think a lot of times for students, they don't have a clear understanding, or they don't have enough life experiences to really know the things that bring them joy, the things that they are drawn to. And so one of the things that we need to do is help students have enough experiences that that we begin to figure out what they're interested in. And there's lots of different things. We're going to talk more about interest in a minute, so I'm just going to move on and put the second part of the thing is, once we know what a student's interests are, to consider contexts for pursuing interests. Now, by context, we mean where and why would you do something? And we all have things that we do in our life, activities that we do, either in work or socially or for recreation, or just in our home life, or in the things that we study and the classes that we take. All of those are contexts for getting to do something. What do I want to do? Why would I do it? And where would I do it? And so we're going to talk some about this whole idea of examining contexts for students. The third one I put there is to learn the concepts and skills to adopt social and community roles needed within these contexts. There are some things that we do in interacting with other people. It's ways we interact with others and participate in community life. And so there are roles that we play: to be a friend, to be a coworker, to be a neighbor, to be someone who's helpful, et cetera. We'll talk much more about this in a few minutes. But to think about what roles a person plays, and do they understand what those social roles are. And finally, that students may need support in organizing potential life activities. And that is actually a skill that we need to think about whether or not students have, is the ability to organize things. And if they don't, to figure out how they're going to get organized, or to support them in this organization process. So that's the one I'm going to start with in thinking about all of these elements of laying a foundation for making a good plan for a person's life, is this whole idea of organization and planning. One of the things we think about is what information. The first thing I put, take a step back, read my sentence. It says students who are deaf-blind may not be able to organize activities effectively due to barriers related to certain effects of deaf-blindness. And the first one I put there is gathering incidental information. What information does a person need to be able to make decisions about things, and what information may they have missed? What information do they have access to, and what information do they miss? And one of the things that I think we know, if there are sensory barriers to easily gathering information, especially at a distance, is that there may be information that a person misses, that they don't have access to. And we need to think about how that affects their ability to understand how things work, what kind of places there are to go, what other people are doing. And these things affect, I think, a person's ability to make decisions. We all know that there are people who have a different set of information. Every once in a while you meet someone who tells you the story is that in my family, my parents weren't really fans of television, and they wouldn't really let us watch television. And there's this sort of block of knowledge that people of your same general age have about popular culture, just because you were having a common experience at a certain age, because there were those, if you're an old guy like me, you were watching Gilligan's Island or something like that, and you can talk about Gilligan and the Skipper, and everybody knows exactly what you're talking about, except for those people who didn't watch television back then, and they have a different understanding. I don't know what you're talking about there. If there's information that you don't have access to, then there are certain things that people consider to be common knowledge that you just haven't had a chance to find out. I remember at one point my daughter had moved to New Zealand, and when she returned back to the States, she had a Kiwi boyfriend, and it was interesting. My daughter was somebody who sort of, even though we didn't really keep her away from popular culture as parents, she had no interest in it, and so she didn't really know much about it. And it was interesting watching the two of them talk about things, and the guy who grew up in New Zealand knew all about American pop culture, because they got all the American television programs, and he was a great consumer of them, and he was very interested to come to the States because it gave him an opportunity to see in real life many of the things that he had observed about American culture on television. He knew more about that than my daughter. It was based on the information that they accessed, and what they were, and where their interest took them in that respect. The information you get affects the things that you know about. And the things that you know about are put together to form concepts for us. We take bits of information that we observe or hear about or learn about, and we put it in file folders in our minds about these are facts that go together and help explain different things that we encounter in the world. And these things we call concepts. And so if there are barriers to us easily gathering information at a distance, it affects the concepts that we have. And it also affects our understanding of social roles, understanding how people are interacting with one another if we don't easily gather information about that. There is a way of thinking about that, and that's to say, how do we know what we know? And so for I think for all of us, there are these three broad categories of how you might know some things. And the first one is direct learning. And by direct learning, we mean hands-on personal experience about things. There are things that we do and we know about them because we've been there, done that. I'll give you an example that I'll carry through all of these different levels and to explain sort of how you might gain information. So I'm going to start with a fact that I suspect all of you know. And that is, if you're cooking on a range top, and you have pots and pans up there and kitchen utensils, if they're where the fire is, or if they're over the burner, those things will get hot to the touch. And if you were to touch them, you could burn yourself. Did you know that? I suspect you probably do. How do you know it? Well, you may know it because of direct learning. That is, that you did cook. And when you cooked, you felt the heat coming off of those implements, the pots and pans, the spoon handles, etc. And if you happen to reach down and touch one at one point, you might, ow, I burned myself. Those things are hot. And now you've learned a lesson, and you have a concept about that. And you learned it through direct learning. Well, there's a second way that you might learn things. And so you may not have ever burned yourself on any of these kitchen implements, but you still know it. And it might be because of a secondary way of learning, and that is when others purposefully share information that they have with us in methods that we can understand. So I'll give you an example about that. And that is, you may have never touched a hot pot or pan, but maybe when you were young, you were in the kitchen, and one of your parents was cooking something, and they said to you, "Don't come around here by the stove, because if you do, these things are hot up here, and if you were to reach up here, you would burn yourself. So keep your hands away." Okay, so in that situation, you got information from someone else about information about knowledge that they had, and they shared it with you, and now you know that. So that's the second way we can gain information, is other people might know some things that they can share with you. But they have to be able to do it in a way that you would understand, using a communication method that you prefer. Okay, there's a third way that we learn things. Call it incidental learning. And that is things that you just learn without you trying or anybody else trying. It's just casually observing your surroundings and other people. This one might be, I'll go back to the range top example. If you are in the kitchen, let's say, just like we talked about before, you were in the kitchen just observing. You were a kid, or even if you were grown up, you were in the kitchen and you weren't cooking, but you saw somebody else who was cooking, reach down and touch something, and they go, "Ow! Ouch!" And what I did there was I licked my finger to relieve the feeling of being burned. So the person might do that, and then they might go off and be calling out to somebody, "Where's the ointment? Does anybody have any aloe vera," or whatever they may use to relieve the burn? And you just observed all that. No one was trying to give you that information. You weren't even really trying to get it. You just found out about it, but you still know it. You could just observe what happened and draw a conclusion and say, "Oh, that looked like that burned that guy. I guess that stuff up there is hot." So that could be the third way that we could get it. It's just casual observation of the world. Now, What's true about this situation is that it is a it's a fact that individuals who are deafblind may have difficulty gathering information, especially at a distance. And so there's lots of things that are happening around them that they don't have access to the information unless somebody is making an attempt to share that information with them or to give them experiences where they can have direct hands-on learning. This incidental learning is how typical people get most of the information that they have. I can't quote a study or anything like that, but from what I've read, the understanding is that the majority of what you learn the third way. But that is the way that's unreliable for people who are deafblind. And if you are someone who doesn't easily get information at further than arm's length, then there's a lot going on that you just missed out on. And people have to make an effort to give you that information. So it's an unreliable way to gather information for people who are deafblind. There's a great explanation of this with a chart and a graphic at the website I put there. They call it the Pyramid of Learning, and it's on intervenor.org if you want to see a little bit more information about that. But one of the things that we do know is that deafblindness affects the information a person gets, and as a consequence, the concepts that they have information about. And so we need to think about that when we're working with students who are deafblind. Is that there might be some things that other people know as common knowledge, but may not be common knowledge for the student, and we have to purposely get them that information. And we can do that by sharing that information in a way that they understand well in their preferred communication modes, or by providing opportunities for them to do hands-on education.
Hey, David, let's go ahead and do an interpreter switch, okay?
Okay.
Thanks. Awesome. Thank you.
Uh-huh. Okay, so I think one of the drawbacks about organization in general for students who may be receiving services, special education services in school, is that they may not have or have developed the ability to organize things for some of these reasons that we talked about. If we think about education in general, the whole concept of education, we could boil it down to this, that what we do is provide students opportunities to learn knowledge and skills, and then to, upon graduation, go out and generalize that knowledge, and then plan how to apply that knowledge and those knowledge and skills in a wide variety of contexts that enable them to succeed in life. And I think sometimes what we do for students who have an IEP is to say, some of those things the students aren't learning or won't learn unless we develop some individualized instructional strategies to enable them to be successful with it. But I think one of the things that we do is we modify the things that we teach. Like one of the things that you might not learn incidentally is when I talk about incidental learning, I like to use some examples like this. Do you know how to behave when you ride in an elevator? I suspect that most all of us behave the exact same way when we ride in an elevator. And that is, I'm guessing, when the door opens, you move as far to the back as you can based on the number of people in there, and then you turn around and face the door, and you don't interact too much with the other people who are in the elevator other than to perhaps have a brief exchange about what floor you're going to and can you push the button. And other than that, that's pretty much what we do. And if anybody does something different than those things, we kind of think it's a little bit strange. So how did you learn that? Did someone teach you about that? Let me explain to you about the elevators, and here's the procedure. No. We learned that just because we went into the elevator and we casually observed what other people were doing, and so we just decided we'd do the same thing. And that's how we learn a lot about what we do, is we just casually observe. And so that's how we know how to behave on a workplace. That's how we know what to do in a in a break room. That's how we learn what we should wear when we go the places we go. Is we observe what's going on around us and draw conclusions from it, form concepts, and then apply that according to the context that we're in. Now, so we may see that students have a difficult time learning that, and so we'll give them special lessons about that. Here's how you act in a casual conversation. Here's the appropriate things to wear, etc. But I think a lot of times we fill in some gaps in the knowledge and skills, but at the conclusion and graduation, it's still sort of up to the student to be able to generalize those things and apply them in a variety of different contexts by making a plan of how to do that. And for some students, that's the skill that they don't have, is the ability to do organization and planning and to figure out how to make things work. And so we need to think about, how are we teaching a person to organize, or if we find that that's kind of a gap that they're not going to be able to overcome, to find out how is a person going to get support in their adult life to be able to organize things and find opportunities to do the things that they want to do, and who's going to do that, and to start helping take that step with the student of, let me help you organize the things that you would like to do, your goals in life, your interests, etc., into life activities that will enable you to have a higher quality of life. So I think we need to think about this whole idea of, how do we help students get organized? How do we teach them skills about organizing? And how do we find people who may be able to support them in organizing when after they've graduated and moved on to adult life in the community? So that's the first thing that I want to talk about, is this whole idea of organizing things. I'm curious if any of you have any thoughts on this idea of gathering information or organizing, and how it's affected when a student is deafblind. Maybe someone could put some comments or questions in the chat about that.
So just to let you know, I'm looking here in the chat, David.
Yeah, Marilyn, I can't see it, so...
Yep, so I'm going to go ahead and I have to scroll up. There were several. Amy had a few things. I have a question. Where will be this event recorded? Okay, so we'll take care of that one. This hot range example is such a helpful example for explaining these three types of learning, which was great. Megan continued on and said, I agree with Julie. I'm taking notes on this explanation, so you have a lot of people in there stipulating how brilliant this is. And let me just, that's a repeat there. So Julie says, well, I always think of starting it with calendar systems to teach organization early. So Julie had a comment there. Again, everyone, please remember, if you have any comments or questions or anything related to what David is saying, please go ahead and put that in the chat box so we can go ahead and give that to him. David, that's all that's in there right now. Wait, somebody just popped some. Nope, that's it. That's it right now.
Okay, yeah, and I appreciate those comments. I want to talk about the calendar system since you introduced it, and that really is a good way to teach a person about understanding and anticipating what's going on, and how to understand the structure of future time frames and how things fit together, and that is an essential element of organization. So that's really a great place to start. And I think one of the the next steps after understanding time frames and how activities fit together is to start to learn more about the kinds of things that go on in the world, and how you can make choices about the things that you do, and how you find the assistance that you need to do it, and how you find opportunities to do those things, so that if you enjoy seeing in your calendar box that there's going to be a time when you're going to be involved in music, and that's important to you, and you enjoy it, to start learning facts about, well, so if you, other than going to music class or music therapy, where do you find music in the world? And what are the places that you would go that are involved in music? And, are there music stores? Are there concerts? Are there, social events where people get together and make music together? How do you get to do it? And so I think that it's great to start with that organization, and then to expand that into thinking about how do you find opportunities for it, and how do you plan opportunities to get to do the things that you would choose to do.
David,
Yeah.
just to let you know, Julie says, I've learned with my deaf daughter and students that I start the day class with what we are doing for the day. Throughout the day, mapping them out for them, and then asking them to tell me throughout the day what their plan is for that particular day. It's constant map, of course, if you will, on what to expect, of course, for that day. Also, to let you know, Megan says, along with the calendar system, a good understanding of the people's and the students' life, name cues, symbols, and when, where they will be. And of course, Julie responded, oh, I like the map idea. And then there's Faith and Megan as well. So I didn't know if you want to comment, but I can continue on if you'd like me to.
Oh, I guess we'll move on. I appreciate all those comments, and I think that was brilliant what you're saying, and I think what you've talked about is not using the calendar as a just a bit of information, but using it as a tool to teach a person how to plan. And I think that is the key to making it something that's really helpful for a person throughout the course of their life, because I think organization and planning is something that a lot of our students have difficulty with.
Okay, great. And then David, just to let you know, Faith says, I think starting early is easy. What about older children who need more time to learn organization to the point they internalize it? Isn't it the internalization of organization that we need our children to learn before they can be successful using it on their own?
Yes, I absolutely think so. And I think that what is important is that you provide opportunities for a person to practice. And it's a skill just like any other skill. It's just like cooking or making the bed or learning how to roller skate. It's something that you kind of have to learn about it, and then you've got to give it some tries and have a few failures along the way, but you learn from them, and as you practice, you get better at it. And so I think that organization is the same kind of thing. So what you do is, like, in the course of doing that kind of stuff, to say, like, okay, so there's 4 things that we're going to do today. What makes sense about how we're going to do them? What should we do first? What should we do second? Think about where you're going to have to go to do these things. Think about what makes sense in terms of making it flow more easily, and sort of let the person in on the background information about how do you make plans about things. An example of this might be with a student to. I say this to families as opposed to teachers, but I think it's the same principle, and that is to say that there are times when you make a plan about what you're going to do for vacation. And I tell families, when you just announce that to a kid, we're going to Disneyland, or we're going to go camping in the mountains, or whatever it is that you happen to choose. They find that out as a bit of information that they can react to, but don't know exactly how that even came about. And so it's important, I think, for kids who don't really understand planning and organization, that you let them, open behind the curtain of how you came to those conclusions. How did you decide that? And talk about different people's different opinions on what they'd like to do. You think about the time and planning timing. You think about the budget and what you can afford, and you do it, and let the student or your family member or know about all those kinds of things that went into making a decision. Because I think a lot of times they just know that decisions, people tell them about decisions, but don't really tell them how they got to that decision. And I think that that's something that we can do. And I think students of all different understandings and language levels can participate in activity in a way that makes sense to them. So if it's going to be what are we going to eat for a snack, to go through the pantry together and find out what's in there and consider the different options, and see if you can, as best you can, discuss the pros and the cons and those kinds of things, so that the person really sort of understands some things about how are decisions made, And I think a lot of times we do choice-making activities with people, and a lot of times those are do you want this or this? Do you want the Coke or the Dr. Pepper? And that's a really sort of a simple. It doesn't really matter what the it doesn't matter to anybody else what the outcome is. It's not it's a choice, but I would say it's not a significant decision. I use those words differently when I talk about this. That we need to help our students understand how to make a decision, and making a decision means this is something that's going to affect more than just me. And that I have to think about things like the resources that are available, what all the different options are, how it's going to affect time, how it's going to impact other activities and things like that. And to the extent that you can give the student understandings about that, that's how they start learning some things about organization and planning. I feel almost like I'm getting hopelessly behind here, so I'm going to move on and talk about the next element of what we're talking about, and that is discovering interests.
And David, before we move forward, let's go ahead and do an interpreter switch. And just to let you know, Amy said, I have a question. Don't worry, Amy, I'll go ahead and respond. One of our deafblind specialists deafblind projects will respond to your question there. But let's go ahead and do a interpreter switch, please.
Okay. In thinking about interests, one of the things that we have to do is consider how we help people be motivated to do the things that we are suggesting to them or working with them on, or how do we make learning activities more motivating for them, and how do we make life activities more motivating for them, is if we consider interests and if we follow interests. So that's related to our preferences, sort of basic what do you like and what do you don't like. But it's also fits into our abilities. One of the things that I think is true for most people, I would not say for all people, but I think it's a common thing for people, is to become interested in things that you're good at. That's if you're in a big family gathering and someone says, hey, let's get together a softball game, you figure that the person who just suggested that is probably a really good softball player. And that's why they want to do it. We sort of follow the things that we become interested in, the things that we're good at. And so if we look at what a person likes and what they're good at, I think that's how we can start to figure out what their interests are. And that should be sort of the foundation of what we do to suggest the kinds of life activities, whether they be work or recreation or social life or whatever, that the person might be most satisfied to do, and the things that would bring them joy in their life and give them a high quality of life. So I think one of the things that we need to do is to find interests. Another element that I didn't write there on that bullet point, which I probably should have, is another thing that affects our interests is the connections that we have. A lot of times our interest is or can be centered around there's somebody that you like to spend time with, and that's what your real interest is the person. You know, like you really like your granddad, and so one of the things that you might do, since you really like to be with your granddad, is do the things that granddad likes to do. And there might be somebody who doesn't have particularly any personal interest in fishing, but granddad does, and so that's what you go and do together, and you enjoy it because you have that time you spend with someone that you care about. And so one of the things to also look at, besides just the preferences a person expresses, is what do people that they care about do? And we often find that those things become interesting to the person. A second thing I wrote there is that revealed preferences may be more accurate than stated preferences. This is something I read about mainly from advertising, literature I saw in advertising, and I'm sure there's lots of different places that you can find information about this psychological concept, but that what people say they like and what they really like may be different. And an example of that in what I was reading about advertising and business is that you can do a poll of people and say what product that you're selling the people have the most interest in, and that's not as reliable as your actual receipts of knowing what people are actually buying, because that is a preference that's revealed and not just asked the question of. We know more about person's interest by observing them and observing the things that they do and how they react to them than in asking them a question about it. The reason I bring that up is because I think a lot of times the kinds of assessments that we do with students, particularly vocational assessments, sort of been based on like asking a series of questions. Do you like this kind of thing? Do you prefer to work inside or outside? Do you, asking a series of questions like that people just sort of say like, well, this is what I think. But a lot of times we find out once we actually give a person an opportunity to do things and observe them and find out about the things and how they react to things, we find that, oh, actually, their interests are different than what they stated, because they didn't really fully understand the question, or they didn't have the background knowledge, or they weren't able to form good concepts about those things. And so when we ask the question, we get an opinion which may or may not be actually borne out in truth. And so if we really want to know what a person's preferences are and interests are, we have to give them opportunities to try different things and make an assessment of help them make their own assessment of the things that they really had fun with, or had fun or got satisfaction from, or found comfortable or less stressful or whatever, and to give the other people who are supporting them an opportunity to see how the person reacts to things and find out in truth what their preferences are and their interests are. Another thing that I wrote there is that it's often difficult to discern what element of any activity is interesting or preferred. And so you kind of have to delve deep into it to do that. I think one of the things that we do when we give people an opportunity, like for instance to try out a number of different jobs, is to just judge it on a globally as, was it a success or was it not a success? Working at the pizza joint, was that a success or was that not a success? Working in an office environment, was that a success or not a success? When what I think we really want to do, if we want to really follow a person's interest, is to break things down and discover. I like to say it like this: what was the best part of that experience for the person, whether it overall was a success or not a success? What was the best part about it, and what was the most difficult part about it? And a lot of times we find good information like that because we find out that, oh, well, the office job didn't really work out real well, but the student or the individual that we're working with, student or adult, they really liked the fact that there was an elevator, and or they really liked the fact that there was a snack bar. And even though the most of what the job was not successful, we do know if we're in a building with an elevator or a snack bar, the person would be pretty happy about that. And so that gives us another opportunity to figure out what are the best opportunities for a person. Or it could be that there was music playing in that one job, or the temperature was cool for that place, and the person liked that. And so to break down the experiences a person has, to say what different elements of every experience were the most successful part of it or the most preferred part of it, and then that helps us build a profile of the person that we can use to help them plan what's the best place to get all of the things that you're most interested in, all in the same place. This last one I put down in there, that altered routines in different settings create new information about interests and preferences. We're sort of on the border, even though we're sort of on the border of COVID right now. And so I know that some of you may be involved in some remote learning, and some of you are not, and some of the opportunities that you have are different. I put this in here as the one positive thing about that is that it enables people to be doing things in different settings, and we learn things about them and their interests that we wouldn't have known otherwise because we get to observe them in a different setting. And that's a lesson from the whole remote learning experience that I think we need to bring forward into the work that we do in the future, which is that if we give a person an opportunity to do activities in places that they don't usually do them and in settings that they don't usually do them, we find out new information about interests and preferences. And so we can purposefully find opportunities for a person to do things in a wide variety of different kinds of settings and different situations, so that we can learn a lot about them and help them learn a lot about themselves and the things that they're drawn to. So if we're going to make a life plan for somebody or help organize their life and give them opportunities to do some things, the first things we've got to do is discover interests. And like I say, I put discover on there because a lot of times I work with students and I talk to the student, and they don't have a good answer for that question, what are you interested in? And I talk to people who know them, and a lot of times they'll say like, well, not much, they like certain games or certain beverages or something like that, and that's all I get. And I say there's got to be something more there. And so one of the things we need to do, I think, is purposefully give people experiences so that we can discover and that they can discover the things that they like best. So any thoughts on interests? I'll give you another opportunity here to throw some things into the chat.
So David, this is Marilyn speaking. We have here, let's see. So Julie says, I really like what you're saying, determining interests outside of traditional vocational interest inventories through discovery and observation. Have you found any tools or inventories that you do like or use, or have you created one based more on your out-of-the-box way of thinking? That would be helpful to share with teams.
I may have put something in the handout. I don't have that one right in front of me, or I may have saved it for next time. I don't know. But if you, the people who talk about customized employment through Mark Golden Associates, MGA, down in Mississippi, I think it is, have some good information and some good documents that they use to go through this process that they call discovery, and that's something that I might recommend. And if I didn't put it in the handout that you got for this, then I think I put it in the one that we're going to be using for Thursday. But it's that's Mark Golden Associates at MGA down in Mississippi that has that. A lot of times I think the things that I see used, people develop themselves, and it's a lot of times I just develop a sort of simple format of tell me about the different experiences a person tries. How did it go overall? What was the best part about it? What was the most difficult thing about it? And to then just find a way to collect that data and put it together into a list of what works and what doesn't. So I mean, I don't have a specific product I'll recommend, but anything that enables you to gather that information.
And Julie says, thanks. I like those questions you think about during discovery. And David, just let you know there's no others in the chat right now.
Okay, great.
And 2 minutes before we do next interpreter switch.
Okay. Oh, did you say now? Oh,
we'll do it in 2 minutes. Okay. Yeah, you're good.
Okay, perfect. So I'm going to move on and talk about contexts. I think one of the things that help us really think about organizing life activities for a person is to think about all the different reasons and places people get to do things. We all engage in our interests in a variety of different places and for a variety of different reasons. And so that can be work. And by work, I mean it could be a job where you're an employee, or work that you do as a small business person, or work that you do as a independent contractor, or as an artisan who sells their wares. So I mean, there's lots of different kinds of work as well. But there's things that we do in sort of this under this umbrella of work. There's also things that we just do to help other people. That may be in an organized way, like I'm going to sign up to go to Habitat for Humanity and help out in getting a house built for somebody who needs it, or to be the person who works together to collect the things for the Toys for Tot campaigns and something like that. So there is helping other people in organized ways, but also helping other people, like helping your neighbor in collecting the branches in their yard, or helping people in your household get some things done that they want to do, or helping a friend do something. So there's helping other people. There is also taking classes. And so those could be going to everything from going to college to signing up for an art class at the local musician, or the local museum, or speaking of music, taking a class with a piano teacher or something like that. There's lots of different ways that you can end up taking classes, but we can study things. That's another way that we engage in our interests. We can do social activities and go do things together with other people that they do. We can do recreation, both in a community setting, like going bowling, or in things that we do in our home. There's also home and self-care. These are all reasons that you might do something that you like to do. And the thing about it is that all contexts are valuable if they're a vehicle to enable you to find purpose, satisfaction, and joy in your life, and to accomplish things that you feel good about and that you feel like brings quality to your life. And so one of the things that in this whole organization plan in looking at is, okay, there's things that you like to do. How do you get to do them? And I think for a lot of students, they don't really know all the possibilities of that. I'll just talk about myself. When I was young, there's a couple things that I really like to do, and one of them was write poetry, and another one was take photographs. Now, those were the things that I would say I was most interested in, and you could say, well, you could do those things for work. And those are there. That is true. Those maybe not poetry in terms of making a lot of money. Photography. There are photography professions. I wasn't as interested in that. In that, I was more interested in taking photographs that I considered had some artistic merit, as opposed to taking pictures of a wedding or pictures that might be used in a newspaper, or things that people do get paid for. So one might say those were not realistic interests in terms of a profession, but does that mean I don't get to do them? No, I still found ways to do them, and some of it I did for recreation, as a hobby, and also like poetry. I took classes about that. I also found a group, a lack of a better word, a club. I think club must not have, but a loosely affiliated group of people who did that I could join together with, and we'd write things, we'd show them to each other, we'd get together and have meetings about that. So you could join something to enable you to do that. It didn't mean I didn't get to do it because it wasn't my job. It was that I had the ability to sort of organize things. If you're like, okay, if there's something I'm interested in, why would I get to do them, and how do I get to do them, and when would I get to do them? And I think that's the thing that we need to help our students understand, is like, look at their interests globally and saying, what are the best ways to get to do those things, and to look at all these different things. What are the things that you like that are promising for employment, that are promising for a business? But what are things that are promising for social activities? What are things that are promising for taking a class? What are the things that are promising for joining a club? What are the things that are promising for doing some community service? And to figure out in all of those different areas, why would you get to do the things you're interested in doing? And helping a student organize that and figure out how the big picture fits together, so that all these different areas of life and all these different contexts can get filled with something that the person's interested in, and all of their interests can find a context. And the last thing I put there is that this is also I put in sort of in reference to the fact that we had remote learning going on, is that learning more about home and community life really helps us get insights into the activities done in different settings, and support options and sustainability. If a person's going to need support to do some of the things that we do, and the support that they're getting now through interveners or other school staff, to think about how successful can the person be if that support was no longer available after school, and if the activity is going to be sustainable for the person, what kind of support do we see available in other settings? And I think those are some things that we learned about during remote instruction when we tried to bring activities into the home. And I think that we can continue to do that, is to learn more about community life, learn more about the systems that can support a person after graduation, learn more about the availability of support from natural supports, and to figure out whether or not the activities that we're doing are sustainable into adult life. And so this is the final one, though, the final one of those four principles that we talked about at the very beginning, and that is about community and social roles. And that one of the things that I think is important for students to learn about in order to prepare them to be able to have a successful life vocationally and in general in their life, is to understand what roles people play in society. Follow their interests and skills after graduation in a variety of contexts often requires learning about and practicing new roles that they may not be experienced with, or might not even know about. So I put here a list of potential roles that we all play at different times in our life. One of the roles we think about is taking responsibility for something, to be in charge of something. And I think that for a lot of students, this is something that they've never had an opportunity to do. When we talk about responsibilities, I think a lot of times where people's mind goes is something like chores. And I think chores are okay. I mean, I'm nothing against, I have nothing against that, but I think that's different than taking responsibility for something. I think a lot of times people do chores as something that they don't have any investment in, and they do it as to cooperate, but not because they think it's really important. I think one of the things that's I think important for helping a person understand responsibility is to give them a chance to be in charge of something that they care about, where they get the sense that what I do is important. It's important to me, and I'm going to be the person who's going to get it done. And I think that sense of having a role of I'm in charge of something, of course, plays right into employment. And so one of the things that I like to talk about people in terms of responsibility, as opposed to saying as a chore, find a job that's important to you and make the person do it. I think it's better to say find something that's important to the student and put them in charge of it. And so and so if you think about, if you look at the student and the things that they do and the things that they like to do and the things that they're concerned with, to say what role can I give them in making that successful and making it happen. So taking responsibility for things, considering the preferences of others is a role that sometimes we take. Sometimes we have the role of being someone who tries to figure out what other people need and want, and figuring out a way to help them do it. I was with a student at the grocery store one time, and she was doing some shopping with her intervener, and she was making some decisions on the what they were going to buy. And I asked the question, what of the products there, which does your dad like best? And the student told me that she had no idea and thought it was kind of a strange question to ask. You're like, I don't know, I don't care, I'm just really worried about what's for me. And I said, well, I think it's actually important to know what your dad likes, because maybe some of the decisions you're making might be affected by what other people that you care about think about. And that way you can be someone who helps others. And so could you ask your dad before next time? And we did this activity again in the future, and she had all that information. She's just like, oh yeah, I quizzed my dad on all these kinds of things. It had never occurred to her that would role that she could play is to do something for someone else. And so I think finding out about what other people like and other people want is something is a good lesson. What it means to be a good neighbor, whether that's being cheerful and greeting people or offering to help or whatever. Finding out about joining clubs and organizations. That's one of the contexts where we get to do a lot of the things that we want to do. And but I think a lot of students don't even know there are such things as clubs and organizations. Or how would you find out about them? Where would you look for information about them? And if you did find out about it, how would you join? And what would the expectations be? Offering help to someone or making a donation is a role that sometimes we play. I was meeting with some staff at a residential, as a group home kind of environment. And they were talking about the situation of one of the residents there who had too many clothes. And when I say had too many clothes, I meant that they were informed by the fire marshal that the closet was piled too high to the ceiling so that it was a fire hazard. And and he needed to reduce the amount of stuff that was in his closet. But he really loved his clothes. He'd gotten clothes as gifts all his life, and they were all important to him. And the idea of culling them down was something that would be foreign to him. And so we were problem solving together. So how can we get this done? And so one of the things that I suggested is maybe he would feel better about it rather than saying like, we're going to take something from you or we want you to give something away, is to understand that he's donating it to help other people. And they said, well, I don't think he would have any sort of concept of what that means. And I said, well, maybe you could gift wrap it, and donate it and gift wrap it, because he understands giving gifts, right? And I said, no, I don't think so. I don't know that he's ever given anybody a gift. Or not that I'm in my knowledge. And I thought, well, that's sad, because that's something we all do. And it's a role that we play in life. And it helps us understand how things work. And so learning about occasions, learning about giving gifts, learning about making invitations, inviting people to do something in a formal or informal way, planning or hosting a gathering, these are all roles. And if you think about work, all of these kinds of things sort of fit into it, because those are the kinds of things that happen at work. There's gathering, there's groups that get together, there's invitations that are made, there's hosting gatherings, there's joining together with people, there's knowing what other people's preferences are. All of those things are skills that I think lead to a successful work life. There's those things that we call soft skills, and soft skills are more than just being, doing a good job shaving and wearing the right clothes and being able to talk in the break room. There's a whole part of life that's centered around these roles. I'm almost out of time. I'm going to show this really quick video. This is a young woman I know, and I'm going to show you this quick little video, and then I'll tell you what it's all about. She's putting some stamps on envelopes. Whoops. I somehow didn't play it. So I'm going to describe this. Her intervener is showing her stamps and helping direct her where to put them on an envelope. And the young woman is smiling now. You can tell that she's enjoying this whole operation of stamping these envelopes. Another envelope, another stamp. Intervener using underhand is showing her where to do things. And now what she's done is she's come over to where the mail slot is, and she's got a stack of these envelopes that are stamped, and she's dropping them into the mail slot. Okay, I'm going to stop this here because we're going to run out of time. But here's the backstory on that. That video was sent to me by people who were working with this young woman, and they said this was a great thing. And what it was the intervener had a friend who also knew this young woman, and that person was getting married. And so because they both knew her, they decided they would go together and have a shower, a bridal shower for her. And they talked some about what the purpose of a bridal shower was, and what was going to happen, and that they would need to have a guest list if they're going to have a party, and then they're going to have to make invitations, and then they're going to mail them out to people. And so they had gone to the post office to mail them out. And I asked everyone involved, was this a new experience for her? And they said absolutely yes. Like the whole idea of planning a party or having a party was something she found herself out sometimes, but she didn't know exactly how it got going. And the whole idea of just sending out mail to let people know about it. So says, do you know anything about mail? It's like she really had never mailed anything, and all of these things are social roles that we play, that if we find ways to help a person participate in them, they understand a whole lot more about the world. So the roles are the things that I think also play into this. And so what we're going to do is next time we're going to come back around and focus more specifically on work. But I think the things that we've talked about here today are the foundations that allow a person to have enough information and knowledge about how things work in the world that enable them to be successful later, but also help them have a more well-rounded life where they get to do the things that they're interested in and get to do things that bring them joy and have a higher quality of life. Any final thoughts or comments that anybody wants to make in the chat?
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And a lot of thank yous. And everybody, thank you so much. And again, it's great to see everybody here. We know you have an opportunity to be anywhere else, but thanks for hanging out with us. Thank you to all the interpreters for being here. We truly appreciate your time. And David, we'll see you on Thursday. Hold on one second. Everybody, thank you.